going to get started with our presentation on leveraging the power of real-world assets in Dotsama. I'm going to be presenting together with Nicoló. I work on product strategy at Centrifuge. Nicoló is our DeFi analyst. My background is in economics. I originally focused on our token design, but have moved into product as a whole at Centrifuge. Nicoló, maybe you can...
Yeah, I also have a background in economics, and then I started working in DeFi, so I'm pretty into the degen stuff. And yeah, I'm helping out Centrifuge with bridging liquidity to our pools for lending and token availability and lending market, mostly.
Cool. So I'm going to get started, and then I'm going to hand over to Nicoló in the middle to go into some of the deeper details. And then I'll take it back at the end.
Yeah.
So just to get started.
Just go
here. Cool. So right now, the current value locked in Dotsama is around 2 billion. This source is DeFi Llama. I think the numbers are not completely accurate, but this is just to give you a picture of where we kind of stand today. So this is, coming pretty far, I think, for such a young ecosystem. But there's a long way that we can go together. Right now, if we look at DeFi TVL as a whole, compared to real-world asset TVL and Centrifuge, we can see different sort of trends here. Obviously, total TVL and DeFi is higher than the real-world asset TVL and Centrifuge. But just looking at a trend of these two charts, we've got, in a bear market, DeFi TVL coming down sharply. It reacts really strongly to the crypto ecosystem. And the whole point of bringing real-world assets into this ecosystem is to have stable collateral that's actually backing stablecoins in DeFi, so that we don't see a chart like this anymore in DeFi TVL, just because this is only taking crypto-native assets. Whereas if we add in real-world assets, we're tapping into an enormous potential that can come into DeFi. So our thesis here is that leveraging real-world assets in Dotsama will make the DeFi growth potential limitless. And we won't have to see a chart that goes down. Let's see. Back clicker isn't... OK, there we go. That we don't have to see these kind of fluctuations in DeFi TVL anymore. That we have the power and the stability of real-world assets coming into this ecosystem so that we actually just see this upward going chart and continuous growth in the Dotsama DeFi ecosystem. So Centrifuge, we think, is real-world DeFi. What do we mean by that? Real-world assets, they encompass anything and everything physical and even digitally native that's digitized. So that's basically 99% of the things that you can think of. Everything from mortgages to real estate mortgages to real assets, inventory, music royalty payments, lots of different assets that you can bring in, tokenize using Centrifuge pools, creating an on-chain asset fund, allowing businesses to bundle these assets on-chain and be able to access financing for them. So right now, this is live in our Tin Lake dApp on Ethereum. This is what it looks like today. We've got over 80 million in DAI in total value locked. Lots of different asset financing pools that are live on Centrifuge. And this is what we're migrating currently right now to the Centrifuge parachain. So all of these pools are going to end up going live on the Centrifuge parachain, accessing greater speed, cheaper transaction fees, and a lot more functionality that we can build natively on the Centrifuge parachain that isn't really realistic to have live on a chain like Ethereum that's very expensive, made for lots of different use cases, but not very good for our specific use case. So Centrifuge is taking these real-world assets and integrating with all kinds of projects in this ecosystem across chains, across protocols, and together increasing TVL and DeFi as a whole. So right now, we're live with integrations with Maker and Aave. We have our parachain live on Polkadot. Tin Lake, the dApp right now, is existing on Ethereum, but soon that's all going to be moving to our Polkadot parachain, as well as our Kusama parachain Altair. And soon the integrations that we're coming out with are going to be Akala, Moonbeam, and more that Nicoló is going to go into in a second here. So really, we think these integrations are the key to increasing liquidity in DeFi. And we're going to show you a little bit more information on what that actually looks like now.
Okay, so from Centrifuge perspective, there are 4 main different integration we're looking forward. And the first one is basically, since we are lending money to real-world asset issuers, we need a stablecoin to bridge to our protocol. So first of all, we are looking forward to bridge all sorts of stablecoin from other parachains, since we can leverage Polkadot composability. So we can bridge stablecoin from Akala, AUSD in this case, or from Moonbeam in the future when it will be USDC or Frax, or from StateMine with native USDT. The second use case is to bridge our CFG and AIR tokens, so the native tokens of our parachain, to other parachain in order to access liquidity indexes and also for lending markets, so to give our users the opportunity to basically borrow against them. And the third integration case would be to bridge our liquidity tokens that are called drop and tin, that are basically the tokens you get when you're investing in our pools. And we want to be able in the future to bridge these tokens to other parachain in order to access like financing and secondary market like liquidity. And the last one is in the future we'll be able to basically funding also other types of NFT, not natively on Centrifuge chain, because right now all the NFTs that are on our pools are minted on Cent chain, but in the future we'll be able to getting funding also for other types of NFT that are native to other protocols. So to go a little bit more in detail, first integration we are working for is actually with Akala. So right now we are working with our sister chain that is called Altair. So we are basically going to list Altair with AUST on Swap as the first native DEX on Polkadot. And we will also looking forward to be able to use AIR token in order to mint AUST in the future when there is enough liquidity in the DEXs. And yeah, and of course, as the HRMP channel is open, we can transfer AIR to Swap, and we can also bridge AUSD to our pools in order to use this stablecoin to funding our asset. And the last step, of course, is to actually use these drop tokens, so it's the senior tranche of our liquidity tokens, to use as collateral for AUSD. So this integration will look like something like the one we have with Maker. So we can basically mint AUSD using our drop tokens. So with Moonbeam, we're looking forward mostly for like DEXs and money market integration for our CFG token. And we'll also be able to basically getting NFT Moonbeam and Moonsama, like Moonsama, that's on Moon River, sorry. NFT to get like access financing on Altair. That's basically more, that's the sister network of Centrifuge. That's more on experimental use cases. So this will allow NFTs holder also to get like access liquidity on Dotsama. So we'll free up some money there. And of course, then we're also looking forward to get this secondary market financing for drop-it-need token that actually is really complex to accomplish, since we have to work out some custom smart contract, because these tokens are like permission. So they're not freely transferable between people. From StateMine, yeah, we are looking forward to bridge like USDT. That is the first centralized stablecoin natively available on Kusama. And of course, also to access other types of NFTs, such as like Remark tokens. And we will be able soon to get Canaries NFT holders the possibility to get financing on our Altair pools, So we're pulling together some Canaries NFTs, and you will be able to getting a loan against them. And now I'm ending to Cassidy again.
So thanks, Nicoló, for going into the detail there. I think one of the keys here of all of these integrations that Centrifuge is working on with other parachains is making DeFi more resilient by combining the power of all of those parachains functionality together with Centrifuge. An example of how we're already doing that today is our integration with Maker. So you can see here we've got a 20 million DAI debt ceiling for this new silver pool. And this is real estate bridge loans. So these real-world assets, what they do is really provide uncorrelated collateral, uncorrelated to the risk that crypto-native assets have, and limitless potential of volume to stablecoins like DAI in this example. And in turn, on the other side, we've got tapping into the stablecoin liquidity that currently the traditional financial world isn't able to tap into. So Centrifuge is really the bridge for all of these businesses to tap into the liquidity of DeFi, providing a flexible credit line of credit and a low cost of capital, maybe not today, but eventually a lower cost of capital because of the efficiency of these systems. So how this could actually look with something like Akala. I'm using the example of an artist and music royalty payments. There's a project that we're talking to called Mufi, so I'm just as an example case, but you could think of this for basically any asset. So step one, an artist is creating some music. An issuer, such as Mufi, they're calculating what the advanced payout is. And so they're using their technology to do this natively, digitally. So that's already a huge step in the right direction. But then using Centrifuge, you mint an NFT that represents this asset, this collateral on chain. You lock it up into a pool on Centrifuge, and these Centrifuge pools, they've got senior tokens and junior tokens. So in this case, the senior token drop could be used from this Centrifuge pool to mint a Akala dollar. And that's a huge breakthrough right there. Then you use that to off-ramp and convert it to fiat for the artist to actually access this advanced payment. So really what we're doing is making it much easier, much faster, and more efficient. And I think that's the key thing here, that an artist is actually, one, able to access financing at all, because right now it's super hard for businesses like this to actually access financing. Most banks are just going to say no to them. And then two, that they're getting it for a fair rate, that they're not overpaying just because it does take some legwork in a lot of these cases to assess the risk of these different asset types. And by creating a system like this, we're making it much more streamlined and efficient to get closer to what the real interest rate for these asset financing should be. So that's a look at, basically a real-world use case of how we're actually going to be able to integrate with Akala and unlock potential for real businesses in the world today. Another use case that I think is interesting to think about is right now one of our integrations is with Aave. This is also on Ethereum. But what if Aave or lots of different EVM-based protocols are moving to Moonbeam, right? So if Aave moves there, this real-world asset market that's currently live on Ethereum could be moved to Moonbeam, and again, unlock a lot of efficiencies because of the low transaction fees, the faster speed of transactions on Moonbeam, and obviously, importantly, the cross-chain communication that all these parachains are tapping into. So integrating Centrifuge with Moonbeam means connecting to both DeFi liquidity, but also potentially new NFTs. Right now in Centrifuge, we mint the NFTs for each asset natively on Centrifuge, but in the future, there's going to be tons of projects like, I know I talked to one called Teller yesterday. They're going to be minting their own NFTs that represent assets, and we want to be able to bridge those from anywhere that they exist over to Centrifuge, be able to pool them together, allow them to access financing. So not having Centrifuge as this sort of central place and only place where you can access financing, but really creating all these integrations to unlock the potential of DeFi growth and the potential for any asset in the world that wants to access financing to be able to finance it. So I think that's, hopefully getting the message across there of how important these integrations are. I don't know if we actually have time for questions now. We've got 12 minutes.
So whoever wants to ask Cassidy or Nicoló something, raise your hands and I will bring you a mic.
Hi. So how do you track the value of an NFT? Who is doing that process? What? Yeah.
So right now, it is very much reliant on what I call this issuer. So these projects that are actually user-facing themselves. So in that example I gave Mufi, they're doing this calculation of what the advance payment should be to the artist and valuing that asset. In the future, what we're working on is actually an underwriter token design. So a design to actually decentralize this process of risk assessment with a group of underwriters that are incentivized to accurately price this risk on Centrifuge. We've got on our governance forum an overview of what that looks like. So if you're interested to read more, I can chat with you to send you the link. But I think it's, yeah, we're still a ways away from really realizing that potential. But I think that's one of the most exciting things about what we're working on at Centrifuge is actually going to be that underwriter process and decentralizing that risk assessment, I think will bring a lot of efficiencies.
Why would you mint a car like an NFT, for example? Because you don't transfer a car that much in its lifetime, right?
Yeah, so I think tokenizing a real asset is one thing, but in this case, what we're actually doing is tokenizing the debt. So if you wanted to get financing for a car, so using this asset as collateral and being able to get a loan for that, using the collateral to back that loan. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the integrations that we could look at would be maybe on some other chain or some other protocol, you actually have the NFT that represents the asset itself. But with Centrifuge, you wouldn't necessarily be using that NFT, but rather something that's actually representing, you know, the asset as collateral.
Hey, you mentioned that the drop tokens are permissioned. Could you dig into that a little bit more? Like who can own and transfer those tokens?
Yeah, so actually these Tin Lake pools, these drop-in tin tokens that are minted that represent the senior tranche and the junior tranche, those are securities. And in order to invest in securities, you need to, if you're in the US, be an accredited investor, or you need to be non-US. And so there's just regulation that's involved here. And Centrifuge is, interestingly, towing the line between TradFi and DeFi. So we're really doing things by the book. And that means that these tokens need to be permissioned in the sense that, you know, you just need to go through this KYC process and be able to prove that you're either an accredited investor or a non-US investor to be able to invest in these pools. I think maybe in the future, there'll be new protocols like Kilt, for example, that's right now on Kusama, that could actually do this seamlessly so that you don't have to go through a KYC process every time you want to use a new dApp that actually needs to go through that you just have like a Kilt identity maybe that allows you to access anything seamlessly. I think that would be really cool. Cool. I don't see any more questions, but I think we're both happy to chat with you outside in the cafe if you do want to come up to us. Oh, the last one. Okay.
No question. Like, I would be curious, like, for example, if we can use Centrifuge for financing development of Hydra, like no more like VC sales, just like issue a debt for development, and the principal we will be paying back in stablecoins, but as a, for example, as an incentives for people for looking for like alternative yield, we can keep part of the interest in HDX or whole or whatever. They can choose like 20% or something, still better than selling something scarce, what will be much more pricey in the future. So, yeah.
I think that's a cool idea. I mean, maybe we're a little bit ways away from something like that on Centrifuge, but definitely interesting. I don't know, Nicoló, if you want to.
Yeah, I think maybe in the future. Right now, I think it's too soon, but definitely can be a use case.
I mean, just because we're definitely focused on like the more concrete real-world assets for now. But I think, I mean, that's the cool thing about our sister chain Altair, is being able to finance all kinds of more experimental assets, and I would say maybe that's something that we could see a pool for on Altair, for example.
And there is some last question from here.
Cool.
Hello. So in the case of collateralizing an asset that doesn't generate a continuous value or a return, just like a car, how do you police the system? How do you make sure the user just show the car as a collateralized and run away with the loan he or she take?
Yeah, so what I mentioned earlier is this sort of line that we're towing between TradFi and DeFi. So we do have a legal framework that's set up behind all of this. So each pool issuer is actually creating, they have a legal agreement together with all of the drop-in-tin investors. And so if an asset were to default, that is the backup scenario, that you could actually go to this issuer legally in the real world and be able to recover the value of that asset if it were to default. I think more importantly though, I think is the structure of these pools. So that's like worst case scenario for sure. But the whole point of having senior and junior tranches is that the junior investors are actually taking that risk up to a certain point. And the junior investors would be either the issuer themselves or other projects that are willing to take, or other funds or people that are willing to take that extra risk. And that's protecting the drop token holders. And in the case of being able to provide collateral for something like AUSD, it's protecting AUSD from that risk as well. So I think it's more about creating a system that can actually deal with asset defaults, and then obviously in that worst case scenario, having this legal backstop.
Any more questions?
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.